Welcome, brother. I'm JK Emezi, head coach and founder of the Porn Reboot system. You can learn more about us by visiting elevatedrecovery.org. And if you are not a subscriber, but you are serious about ending your out-of-control behavior with pornography, sex, or masturbation, then go ahead and subscribe. Make sure that you click on the little bell icon so that you receive notifications each time I release a video, and I release videos 4 times a week. Let's get into the question for today. I often receive questions from my clients asking me how they can convince their therapist that porn addiction is a real thing, or how they can convince them that they have a problem with pornography. And before I do that, I want to make one thing clear. Some men feel that what I do as a reboot coach is the same thing as what a therapist who helps men with sexually compulsive disorders would do. That is not necessarily the case. As a reboot coach, I focus on 2 things. The first thing is taking care of the things which are holding you back in the present moment. Those roadblocks, solving your problems that affect you now, and helping you create a clear plan for the future where pornography and masturbation are no longer affecting your life. A therapist, on the other hand, usually deals with some of your past issues. These may be issues that have to do with abuse, they may have to do with abandonment, they may be attachment related issues like whatever it was that causes you to feel a deep need for loneliness or a deep need for intimacy. Now, it doesn't mean that the Porn Reboot system doesn't provide the tools for you to address these issues from your past. It's just that therapists are uniquely trained to handle this aspect of your life. But even though that is the case and that is what they do, there are many situations where men end up speaking to their therapist, and their therapist either tells them that they're making a really big deal out of this whole pornography and masturbation thing, or their therapist tells them that masturbation is not a big deal, right? And viewing pornography is healthy. Or in some of the worst case scenarios, their therapist actually laughs at them. Yes, I've had clients over the years who came to me scarred, emotionally scarred, because the first time they told the therapist about their problem, and this is a problem, as you know already, it comes with a lot of shame. It's very, very difficult to talk about this because of the type of pornography we've watched, because of the impact it has on our self-esteem. Many of us loathe and hate ourselves, and sometimes we can barely live with ourselves because of our behavior. So when somebody opens up in what he considers to be a safe space and talks to a therapist, and that therapist laughs and they're like, what? Porn is a problem for you? This can have a devastating effect on that person. And I've had some men who just closed up for years until they came across my videos or my podcast and got to a point where they decided that they were going to speak to me. It's an unfortunate situation. I'm just going to answer the question first of all before I run my mouth. How do I convince my therapist that I have a problem with porn addiction? Or how do I convince my therapist that porn addiction exists? You don't. Don't do it. Don't even spend your time doing it. Don't waste your time doing it. Here are the reasons why. The first reason is because many therapists are not educated about pornography addiction. They studied some modality which is relevant to what they do as therapists, but many of them have not continued with the education. They haven't kept up with the latest research. They haven't been to conferences to find out what is happening. The world is changing. Mental health is changing. Now that we have been impacted by the pandemic, there's also going to be an update in the research out there as to how we behave as human beings, how we respond to different things like social media, how we behave socially. And any self-respecting therapist or coach needs to keep themselves abreast of all these changes that are happening to human beings. Well, the truth is many therapists just aren't. They just don't do that for the same reasons that most human beings just don't. They procrastinate. They are doing well enough with the stuff they're teaching. There's just no need for them to do it. So that's the first reason why. If they were not going to educate themselves prior to you showing up, there's no reason why you are going to be the catalyst for them educating themselves. They can easily work with another client. The second reason is they might be porn viewers themselves, or worse still, addicted to pornography. Now, this might sound surprising, but I just want to tell you that the medical professions are not holy. They are human beings. In my program, we have many physicians, we have many therapists, we have many coaches, I won't say any names of course, people who were trying to help other people end certain addictions. And they've ended up in our program seeking my help. So they are human. Unfortunately, some therapists may not even know that they have a problem with pornography, and when you bring it up, it just becomes an issue that's perhaps a little too close to home for them to admit that this exists and they can help you. All right? They may be living in denial, they may be rationalizing and justifying their behavior, or they might just simply enjoy viewing pornography, not be addicted, and they just feel that it's a line they don't want to cross with their clients, that this is something sexual. It's not a big deal, it is healthy, and this client has some other issue that's making him feel shame about his behavior. The third thing, and this is not something that you as a YouTube viewer of my channel might be familiar with, but for those who are in my system who ask this question, I'm a driven person, and most of the men who end up in our coaching program are driven men. They're men who have big goals, they want to achieve their goals. When there's an obstacle in front of them, they're not procrastinating. They're like, who can help me get rid of this because I have a place to go. So these men tend to be trying to be more disciplined, more focused. They're trying to relate to people better. They're trying to improve their health. And so their lifestyle matches with mine. My system matches with their lifestyle as well. So certain things like not procrastinating, waking up early, reading on a consistent basis, taking care of your body and your health, being social, improving yourself. These are things that men who are in our group coaching program just resonate with. And often we'll have guys from our program visit with a therapist, and the therapist says, oh, okay, so you're in this coaching program. What are some of the things you're doing? And they're like, well, I have a very specific time which is put aside, which is just for rebooting, because I'm not able to do that throughout the day. I'll procrastinate. So I put aside a very sacred time for that. This is a time where I educate myself more about my reboot. This is where I use the different strategies. This is where I practice using my tools. This is where I journal. This is where I reflect on my slips. This is where I update myself on my progress. And sometimes the therapist might go like, listen, that's too much. That's too much pressure. Like, you're waking up at a certain time, you're putting time aside for your self-improvement, you're exercising to change your biochemistry. Like, that to a therapist who is not driven, and there's nothing wrong with that, is gonna sound like a lot to them. And I'm generalizing here, but many therapists are not as driven as certain personality types. And that's absolutely fine, because you might be somebody who's come across this channel and you're like, JK, this is great, but I don't think I'm like you. I'm not content with this out of control behavior, but I'm also not particularly driven. I don't have huge goals. I have simple, basic goals. I just want to be happy, and I'm more or less content with my life, except for this porn addiction thing. So you might find some of the things that I say a little bit of a turn off or off-putting. In that case, I highly recommend you find a coach who isn't as driven as I am, because his community is going to be similar to your personality, and that might be a better fit. But for the most part, if you're a driven person and you are in our program, then your therapist might, they might think it's a little bit too much. The next reason is that most therapists, if not all, are incentivized to work on other issues. So in the Porn Reboot system, our promise is very simple. We'll get you to control your behavior in 90 days. That's it. If you want to rewire your brain using our system, it's going to take 1.5 to 2 years. And you don't need to work with us during that time period. Some people still do, but most guys come in 90 days, learn how to control their behavior, and they're off on their merry way to live their lives using our system until their brain rewires. Well, there is really no financial gain in that for a therapist who charges, let's say, by the hour. So if they're going to be working on some sort of root issue, root cause, and they're going to be diving deep into your problem to find out what it was that happened to you that made you addicted to pornography in the first place, or addicted to sex, then that means you're going to be visiting with them for a rather long time. And I've had a lot of clients come to me, first-time clients, and say, JK, I love my therapist, but we've been working for a long period of time and I'm not getting any results right now. I'm learning more about myself. I've let go of a lot of things. I'm loving myself more. I've become very forgiving. But darn it, I am still slipping every other day. I just tell them like, yeah, that sounds like a therapist is doing a great job at helping you find out what your root cause is, but a coach is going to help you with what you are dealing with right now that's interfering in your life. So just be aware of what therapists are incentivized to do. The final thing I want to say when it comes to answering this question, if you are facing this dilemma, is that if your therapist is doing a good job, if you are comfortable with your therapist, if you are experiencing progress with your therapist, I don't recommend that you stop seeing your therapist. I think you should keep seeing your therapist, but I don't think you should go out of your way to try to convince your therapist that you have a problem with porn addiction. If they don't believe that it exists, chances are they are not qualified to help you end your out of control behavior with pornography. But if you find a great therapist who helps you with some of the other stuff, man, that is an opportunity. Keep doing it. But my suggestion is that while you're working on all those things from the past, which are very helpful, start working at the same time on your behavior as it affects you and as it impacts you right now. If it's affecting your career, your focus, your happiness, your relationship, start working on it right now. You do not need to wait. You can do both of them together. And don't fall for that falsehood that if you find out whatever the root cause is, your behavior right now is going to stop. That is not how it works. Your brain has been rewired to view pornography. If you find out whatever the root cause was, the traumatic incident that may have happened, that's not going to magically undo years of rewiring. And I get a lot of guys who are like, yeah, I'm going to work with a therapist and I want to find out the root cause. Great. And now what? What happens now? What happens to your brain being rewired? Does that make sense? I hope it does. I'm JK, your brother in the struggle. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. And if you are a man who has been thinking about working with a therapist or is currently working with a therapist and you're not really seeing any progress with your out of control behavior, consider getting on a call with me or with one of my qualified Reboot strategists to talk about where you are right now, and we can find out if there's something we can do. Perhaps we can point you in the right direction, which doesn't have to be my group coaching program. If you're just stuck and you're like, man, we're working on stuff, I am my therapist, but something's missing, we might be able to help you find that missing piece. And if you want to do that, there's a link to schedule a quick, free, no obligation call in the description below this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you later on in the week.